at the state. Sorry, yeah. That's fine. So we did a big press announcement at the State House with the Maine Connectivity Authority and the governor's office, and just announced that Charter was going to be doing a $70 million upgrade to its existing infrastructure by the end of 2025, bringing symmetrical services. Oh yeah, you got it. Okay. All right. Okay. So there's that. But so I think, like I said, we talked about that, but I can go through the questions that you sent if you want to do that, and then just kind of respond to those. But I'm open. And then, the other thing is I did submit an inquiry internally to get a map of the unserved areas for the town. And they got delayed because of some other, I get thrown into the queue with like 40 other states. And so there were some other deadlines that were ahead of ours. But anyway, so we should have that map by the end of next week. And so what I want to use that for is put together kind of a cost estimate for the town, and like what it would cost to build out fiber to the home to the rest of the community. And then we can kind of work out like what Charter would pay. And then maybe we could look at a Reach Me grant for the next round is an opportunity or an option, depending on what the town wants to do.
Okay.
So.
Well, if you want to go on the list of questions that I sent you, why don't I just read you the question and then you can respond.
Okay. I have them pulled up too, by the way. So, but if that's easier for the group, then I can.
Oh, do you? Oh, go ahead.
So, I guess I'll read the question, I guess, and go from there. So, the first question was about addressing our Spectrum's approach to providing broadband service to Perry residents. We described a hybrid model, which fiber was used in the middle mile connectivity coax to the last mile. Is there a model where the last mile is fiber? So yes. So our existing network is this hybrid fiber coax system, right? Where it's, and if you want, what we can do too is set up another, not that you guys want another meeting, but maybe at your next meeting, we could have like somebody from our technical team kind of give you a more in-depth presentation about like the technology and how it works. And it's not super high level or high, like in depth where you won't understand, but it helps kind of get a better sense of how our network works, how we monitor it, and how we kind of keep track of, upgrades and things like that. But so that aside, the short answer is yes, we will do fiber to the home extensions for anything new. Like, so anything new that we have is fiber to the home, even if it's in our existing HFC or hybrid fiber network. So our hybrid fiber network is essentially like fiber backbone, but the only coax is really from the pole to the house. So that's where we've got the mix, but that network is scalable, and that's what we're going to be increasing our speeds that we did that announcement with a couple of weeks ago. We're going to be increasing our speeds to symmetrical up to gigabit symmetrical initially, and then it can scale up to 10 gig symmetrical, which that will happen. I mean, beyond 10 gig symmetrical, I don't have an idea on timing or when that will happen, but it could actually end up being, like swapping out those coax drops for fiber. But again, the company is only at this point planning on, like, I guess we're just testing up to 10 gig symmetrical, but we know with this high split technology that we're doing, that will be deployed by the end of 2025, everybody will have gig symmetrical minimum, at the least. So well, not like it'll be 300, 500 by 500, then gig symmetrical, and then it'll scale up to gig or up to 10 gig symmetrical.
Okay.
In the near future. So you talked about the community solutions in the bulk program, and understand that there's some hesitation, and it's a different model. I mean, it's used a lot in homeowners associations and condos, and it is a little bit of a different application for our community, right? Because you're a government agency, and there are some different kind of criteria I think that you have to consider, which I completely understand. So what we've talked about is really like, and the mapping that I'm getting or have requested internally is to understand like what is the rest of the build out, like where are the rest of the homes that we don't serve today, and how do we, what's that costing look like, and then do we need a grant? maybe it's such that we don't, but maybe we do. And then that's where we could partner together to work on a Reach Me. Well, like we like Charter could put in a Reach Me application for the next round, which would extend services to the rest of the community. And so a partnership, what that would look like. So I think a couple of things. I think the Maine Connectivity Authority is figuring out how it's all new to them too, right? Like they're kind of figuring out the rules of the road as they go a little bit. And they're making some modifications and tweaks as they have rolled out these programs. So they haven't announced the first round of Reach Me, which is a line extension, which they're supposed to do at the end of this month. But essentially, yes, I mean, like we would work with the town, whether or not the onus is on the company to put together an application and submit the project. Or if it's like a joint partnership, we could take the lead and kind of like putting that application together for you guys. And obviously it's in collaboration, and together. So
Melinda, could I just ask you, please, to explain the Reach Me grant quickly to this committee?
Yep. So yeah, and I can send you some information. So the Maine Connectivity Authority has 4 buckets they've divided their money up for the federal funds that they've gotten into 4 buckets, right? They've got Connect the Ready, which is more like entire town projects, like towns that are completely unserved. They have Reach Me, which is for incumbent providers to submit applications to build out the rest of the town, like 100% of the town. And that's a lot of like where Charter's opportunity is, for doing that. And then they have a middle mile bucket of money, which is to try to enhance this like middle mile access that will, I guess, hopefully spur additional build out. And then they also have like planning grants. So those are their 4 buckets of money. But if you go to, and I can send you guys the link or put it in the chat, like the Maine Connectivity Authority website, they've really done a nice job kind of like laying out their programs and how they work, and anything and everything you want to know is pretty much on there. So, but I can certainly send that along to you so you can take a look. Oh, I think you're on mute, Elaine.
Okay. Do you have any intelligence when they're going to, when MCA is going to figure out the new operating model for the grants that are going to be coming forward this year?
So I understand that, like, well, for the Reach Me program, my understanding is that they're going to be voting on that at their next meeting in April. I don't know if it's next week or the week after. I feel like with their Connect the Ready, with their like townwide program that they have, that they are looking at maybe making some adjustments to that. But then there's also BEAD money that's coming in. So the Connectivity Authority has to submit an application to the federal government about what the remaining needs are for the state of Maine and what that cost is going to be, right? So they're just in the process of putting that application together for that other bucket of money that the federal government has allocated for states. I don't know if that answers your question specifically or not.
My understanding is that the BEAD isn't going to come online until about 2024, 25, right?
Yeah, like I think that, so they have to submit their application, and then, yeah, I think that it's, I've kind of heard that it might be this fall, but I'm not sure how fast the feds are going to work on dispersing the funds.
Well, we're talking about the federal government here.
And there's that. No disrespect, but just saying they don't work so fast sometimes. Yeah. I'm trying to think. So a time frame for completion. So I think the biggest obstacle for us or the time delay is make ready, right? So if we a couple things, so if we kind of have a project laid out with the town of Perry, right, and we said, here's what it's going to cost to build out the rest of the town. Here's what Charter will contribute to the cost of that project. Here's what we need. I mean, we can get up and running pretty quickly, and we would apply for poll applications, you know, as soon as, you know, everything, like the I's and T's are dotted on the contract, if you will. And so, but once as soon as we get those pole permits, which take like 6 to 8 months, and then when the make ready is done and everybody's moved and we're ready to attach, it only takes our team like about 4 to 5 months to get like our fiber on the poles, and then get addresses built in our billing system and up and running. So we generally have like our standard kind of time frame is like, we will 100% be up and operational by 12 months after the poll applications are done. And usually it's way before then, but we just sometimes, with all this activity that's happening in the field on broadband between like Consolidated, and that's one of your other questions, Charter did not get any RDOF funding for Maine, but Consolidated did, right? So they're going to be like very busy, in addition to a lot of the grants and that they've recently received, and their, you know, other projects that they have. So they own a lot of the poles that we attach to. So there's going to be a significant amount of activity going on in the pole space in general, between like Consolidated, Axiom, GWI, like you know, Charter, Comcast, like, so it's just going to be. So we always try to say like, definitely we'll have everything done, but a year after we get all the pole permits, just to give us a buffer and resources too. I mean, like, we've got a significant supply of, you know, contractors and fiber, and I think that, you know, we don't generally run into those issues, but that, you know, post-COVID, that could be happening, so.
How does Spectrum deal with the complication of these RDOF territories that are embedded in a community like ours?
So generally what we do when we look at a project, like and I'll be curious to see what we get back for Perry, right? So we generally will exclude those RDOF areas because a couple of things, like one, you generally can't get funding for where, you know, the federal government is already providing funding
Right.
for. And, you know, we don't, and that's one of the kind of cornerstones of Charter. Like, we don't want to overbuild in an area that's already getting government subsidies for that area. So we'll pull those out if there are any. Do you guys know if there are any RDOF areas in Perry or no?
Yes, there are. Consolidated has several areas. They're very discontinuous though. It's strange. Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting. Like I said, I should get that map back like next week, so I can easily share the map with you guys pretty quickly. And then like have our team pull together like an estimate. But I'm super curious to see where those pockets are.
And they are not, it's not a huge part of the town,
Okay.
the
No, but
RDOF area.
it's an important part because there are a lot of houses on the ones the sections that they selected.
Okay.
Are the Vetro maps available to you?
For the RDOF areas, you mean, or?
Yes.
Well, I know that like our internal like mapping team, the internal mapping team that I have that works, they do have access to, I think, whatever the latest, you know, kind of FCC filing or, you know, information is that they have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but then I also know right now, like all that BDC, like fabric data is being kind of combed through and challenged by different providers. I know, like for my company, you know, for Charter, that there are like nationwide, you know, a few million discrepancies of like passings and stuff. So, but I don't know exactly. I can get back to you on that one. I'm not 100% sure. I'm assuming we do, but I personally don't, so I don't know. I don't have visibility into that.
Right.
I don't know if I want it either, by the way. just kidding. No, mapping is like you know, the thing of mapping is so interesting too, because it's, you know, it's not always 100% right. And until literally we get boots on the ground and like do a walkout, to me, like that, I feel very confident after we actually, and we do that before any project, right? We'll send people literally walking the streets and noting like where the homes are, how many feet off the road they are, how far they are from our plant, like, so we can actually be very specific about that. And so, and it, you know, we've got a team of employees in Maine that actually just focus on that.
Mhm.
Um, I think a couple of other questions that were on the list were providing references from residents and businesses that we are now operational. Absolutely. Like, so when ARPA money first came around for a lot of the community, like that went directly to the communities, we worked with about 15 different communities to do line extensions, right? So it just kind of it didn't go through the Maine Connectivity Authority program. It really just went through the towns, right? So we like partnered the towns that we currently serve. And so we reached out to a lot of the communities and said, hey, you know, if you're going to allocate your funding to broadband, let's put a cost together. And we got really kind of creative and pulled together partnerships with a lot of, like, about 15 different communities. And a lot of those are already up and operational from 2020, which is really great. Like, actually, most of them came online the end of last year, which is great. Like Westport Island and St. George and some other folks too. So happy to provide you guys with some references and, you know, talk about how that process went and the relationship that we have. But, you know, we'll pass like our goal is to get everybody and provide service to the, you know, the entirety of the community.
Right. I appreciate that. If you could just email me a point of contact, email preferably, we can follow that up.
Okay. Yep. Got it. And then I think we would help. I mean, one of the questions was capacity in writing the grant. So if it's not, so right now the Reach Me program through the Connectivity Authority is really just incumbent upon the provider to submit information, and
Right.
it's like through a portal. So we just like enter information online, and if there's not, it's an application process, but it's not overly detailed, if you will, and for like the old Connect Main one used to be. But if there is that process that is needed, then, you know, we'll throw all of our resources together and work. We'd love to, you know, collaborate and, you know, take the lead on putting that application together.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, so the last question is providing a high level cost to the homes and businesses. Absolutely. And I think I mentioned this at our last meeting, but, you know, with respect to businesses, like if you guys have a business in town today that needs fiber, those are addressed very differently. And most of the time we will just be able to build out a direct fiber connection to that business, like under like a normal situation. I mean, it doesn't have to be, I'm not framing this right. Like, we'll generally just build fiber to a business. Like, I mean, it's a very aggressive model, and it's a lot different than how we treat or how like residential services are looked at. So, you know, that's something just to think about. And that, you know, if there's a business that's like, hey, I don't have fiber, like, or, you know, need broadband, like, let me know like now, and we can absolutely take a look and see like what that would be. And a lot of times the cost of the construction is rolled into a contract that the business would have with, you know, for their services. And so there wouldn't be a cost to build out.
Mm.
Just because of the nature of the services are generally different.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we need to wait a little bit longer for you to get the maps that you need to get a better idea of what it's going to entail to service the rest of our town.
Yeah, I should have that. They told me today that I should have that map by the end of next week. So I'm hopeful for that. And then, like I said, I'll share it as soon as I get it, and then we can work together, or I can work internally to put a cost together, an estimate of what the build out cost would be and how much Charter could contribute to the cost of the build.
Okay.
So definitely within the next week and a half, the latest, I should have that information for the build out, or I mean, for the unserved, and then it might take another week or so to get, you know, the costing pulled together.
I had a quick question that Melinda, that applies to all communities, of course, that are examining this. So with a new build out, I understand that the drop would be fiber.
Mhm.
And then, so how long would it take a community like Perry? 'Cause, to have the existing coax drop, the existing copper drops, how long would it take for those to be transitioned to fiber so that the entire town has access to fiber?
So is the concern of the town fiber to the home or having access to symmetrical gigabit or beyond services?
As
So
far
I
as
guess
It's a
I
good
guess,
question. It's a good question. And one can
Yeah.
take the view that if you have, the middle mile is all fiber and to the home is coax, but you're getting service that is what, 500 over 30 or something like that. That may be sufficient until you want to make the complete transition when you get up to the gets multi-gigabit speeds.
so so I guess what I'm saying is that the network that we have in place today, from what we have testing in our cable labs today, can deliver 10 gig symmetrical services. So what's beyond 10 gig could be a swap out of the drop to fiber, 100% fiber. But the company is scaling and has that capacity on the existing HFC network. And that's why I wanted to do, I offered to do a presentation with our technology person to show you and demonstrate how this network really works, because I feel like there's a big almost kind of like a negative connotation when it comes to hybrid fiber coax, like it's inferior, and it absolutely is not. But again, I feel like, we are future proofing the technology and the infrastructure for Charter. There is no doubt in my mind that this company, I mean, everything, the stock price is right on it. Like, the company's not going to let this fail, right? And so the network, like I said, that we have in place today is scalable and will meet, can it go to at least 10 gig symmetrical, if not more. So what we don't know is how technology is going to evolve and what's going to come down the line. But what I do know, for at least the next 2 years, we're going to have gig symmetrical services. I bet you within 3 years, it will be up to higher than that. And like I said, the new drops that we are doing are fiber to the home. And the benefit with that, especially in rural areas, is that you can deliver a longer drop, right? So you can go 1,000 feet off the main road to get to a home and not have to put any additional equipment on the line. So there are pros and cons to both, I think, in some respects, but yeah.
Any other questions, gang? John?
No, I think once we get a look at that map and get a better idea how much it would cost, I think that would probably lead to additional questions.
Yeah, and I would also love to know from your perspective, if there are areas on the map, and like I said, I'll send it over as soon as I get it, that are missing or that you have questions about, because again, mapping isn't always 100% accurate, and once we, I had mentioned, about doing the walkout and stuff. So if there are pockets that you're that's not, we need to look at this, then we'll send people out to take a look.
I would also be interested in that presentation from one of your technical people. That would also be helpful, please.
I would really enjoy setting that up, because I really feel like it gives you a really good insight into how we manage the plant, what our expectations are, and how we plan to grow and scale it in the years to come. And the one cool thing too is that announcement we made a couple weeks ago at the State House. We were the first state in the country for Charter. We're the first of 41 states to make that announcement now, so publicly. And we fought a lot. Maine is really ahead of the curve on a lot of these broadband grant program. And we pushed hard to get that announcement out, because I feel like it's so important. There's just so much focus right now on symmetrical services and making sure Maine is positioned for the future.
Gee, it would seem that if we're so far ahead of the curve, we ought to be first at the trough too.
I know. Well, listen, I'm hopeful that like, by the middle of 2025, everybody's done. Like we've already started the whole upgrade, if you will. So I'm excited about it.
You mean the whole state?
Yeah,
Wow,
we're working on it. It's already like, everything's like kind of like started already kind of in process for sure.
that's really good to hear.
Yeah.
The other side of my brain says, I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, I think one thing, that you've got, Charter is a big company, but at the end of the day, making these commitments is really significant for the company, and it's not gonna, that we're not gonna back away from that.
Right.
And I think, and the company also has the money and the resources to put behind that capital investment.
Understood.
So I really appreciate you guys, let me know, if maybe at the next meeting, we could do the technology presentation, and then I'll get the map to you at the end of next week, maybe beginning of the following, if I don't get it by the end of next week. And then we can, because I think working with you guys would be fantastic.
Good. Well, we appreciate your willingness to talk to us again, and this has been very helpful to me.
Okay.
Sorry we lost the original email for a couple of weeks.
I know, I don't know what happened. I was like, and you sent me that note, I'm like, oh my God. I'm so sorry, I don't know what happened.
I do too.
So,
I
but,
try not to, but I do.
okay. Thank you. So
All right.
I'll get that map to you, Ray, and then, like I said, if you know the date of the next meeting, let me know, and I'll line some folks up to be on the call with me.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, have a great night, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Another interesting thing to think about, isn't it? Because it sounds like the hybrid model would work as it is, which means that I don't know, Elaine, didn't we figure out that they might have like 40% of Perry right now that they're servicing?
Yeah, it was quite a bit. And I can ask. Oh, I don't remember. I do remember it was I feel like that the rough back of the napkin idea is that Ardoff was about 20%.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I do feel like you're right, Ray. I do feel like it was about 40%.
Yeah,
But it doesn't mean though that just because that they have serviced 40%. For example, at my home in Eastport, I can have Spectrum if I want. I can have um, Consolidated if I want. So, but not every community is like that. Some they have one choice,
right.
right? So
I
just
figured, yeah,
so,
I think I came up with the 40% number just based on the number of homes that they say they service.
yeah,
And
I
it
think-
looked like about 40% of the number of homes we say are in Perry. I think that's where that number comes
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
But what's their take rate? 10, 50%?
I don't know. You'd have to ask Melinda that because I can't, and they may not even tell you. I don't
I
know.
would be
That's
surprised if they do.
that's really a question for Melinda.
I know. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to think about how they'd work around the off areas because they're so not contiguous. I mean, I don't know what Consolidated is going to do because they're going to have to get a fiber signal to these off areas themselves.
It'll be interesting to watch.
Isn't RDOF right now limited to 25.3? Isn't that the requirement right now? I know they were gonna bump it up.
I did 25/3. Yeah, and Maine has a different, which is where it gets kind of interesting. The state wants to see 100 symmetrical,
Right.
right? But federal grants and things don't require that. So yeah, 25/3 is a standard number that they give. Yeah.
And I guess is it true that they get up to 7 years to meet that requirement to qualify for the grant?
Yeah, they do have, I don't know how many years they have left. So the basic bottom line is that RDOF awardees can file for extensions. And there's a certain percentage of communities or RDOF areas that my understanding is that they can just say, we're not able to build that out. There's a percentage.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They give a lot of loopholes to the providers, don't they?
Yeah, there was a lot of things there's, about RDOF that's, let me see if I can't, here, I mute and then keep talking. Let me see if I can't find you some RDOF information that I can drop in the chat really quickly, okay?
Yeah.
Melinda talked about the hybrid system. I got family and friends in Robinson, and it's not symmetrical. If they're right next to the fiber cable right next to the road, it's impressive. But if any distance is off the main drag, meaning Route 1, and there's a considerable drop in upload speeds. So that would be interesting to hear what the technical team has to say about that.
Yeah. Do you have any numbers? I mean, having numbers in your hand is really compelling when you're talking to tech folks.
Well, I know right next to the Route 1, guys are experiencing 300 to like 280. So that, they're pretty close to symmetrical, but yet farther down towards the main part of Robinson, the farther they get away from the node or the substation, they have good download speed, but again, they're looking at about 50, 30 over 50, 300 over 50. And I know my daughter, which lives quite a bit off the main drag, but they ran everything for free. She's about 1,500 feet, I believe, off the main road. And she's looking only at about 30 or 40. Not that there's anything wrong with that. About 200 download, 30 or 40 upload.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to the 25.3 that she had previously, is still impressive. But it would be interesting that, and they're all under basically from the pole to the residence, it's a copper wire.
Right. But correct me, well, you tell me. If you're going from the main line, which I assume is Route 1, into the neighborhoods and down the roads, is that not fiber also until you get to the pole near the house
Right.
where they go copper?
It is all along Route 1 is, I believe, under President Obama's administration, they put that fiber in.
Right.
Especially, essentially what Spectrum is doing is tapping into that, I guess they call it the third mile. Or whatever they call it. But anyway, yeah, they're tapping into that.
The 3-ring binder.
Yeah.
Is that what you're up? Yeah.
And also that with Spectrum, I have to admit, they got the deep pockets. When Melinda mentioned that, that they would take a look at the map and see how much of it that they could fund. That's telling me that maybe, because I know there's concern in the town of Perry, the taxpayers, that there might be some type of financial burden. That would be a tough argument to go against, even if you don't agree with their business practices. But if they could come up with a plan that says, we can do this at no cost, no bulk purchase agreement, but at no cost to the town of Perry, that's quite attractive. And they have the resources, the financial resources to do that.
I agree.
And Scotty's job
On the other hand, if they, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying Scotty's job would be a lot easier if it wasn't costing the town of Perry. Actually, all of our jobs would be a lot easier if it wasn't going to cost us anything.
That was a huge concern at the last selectman meeting is, what this is gonna cost to the town. Also, another concern that was brought up at the meeting was as far as the grant process. Does this need to go to a town vote if you're gonna apply for a grant on behalf of the town? Right now, our legal advisors are saying it does. So it would need to be a town vote before anybody on any behalf of the town of Perry can engage grant writing process. That's the way we're perceiving it right now, unless somebody corrects us or proves us wrong. I think it was brought up by Maine Municipal.
Yeah.
It's actually on their webpage.
So could you do it with a town meeting, or do you have to actually do a referendum of the town?
That I don't know. I would think just a town meeting. And I don't know when your grants have to be in. Our town meeting is the third week of August. I know you said your deadline was sometime in August, but you could also do a special town meeting. I don't foresee it being any problem. We're trying to do for the good of the town. The
Right.
problem would be not the grant, but if it does come into funding. But right now, that's what we're trying to steer around.
Right.
Well, Scott, what happens if the ISPs do the grant work? They submit the grant work, and theoretically, if we do get accepted for the grant, isn't it up to the town at that point to decide if we want to accept the grant? If the ISPs, for example, Spectrum, is willing to submit all of that, and once we get approved, if we do get approved, then at that level, shouldn't it be left up to the voters whether we want to accept that?
That I don't know. I'll have to ask about that again, but it was brought up at the last selectman meeting that we had was that as far as moving forward for a grant on behalf of the town of Perry. Now, if the grant was on behalf of Spectrum or Down East or anything like that, I wouldn't see how that falls under the town of Perry unless we accept funding.
Right. Yeah.
It would seem to me that that one of the criteria might be whether there's a commitment on the town for money.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, then I think it's a slam dunk that you have to vote on it.
I mean, I would think that the town, members of the town would have to be involved when we're at a point where we want to make a recommendation for an ISP. And whatever the town decides to do as far as an ISP, at that point, I think the ISP would probably take the ball and run with it. And then we would probably have to have another vote or some type of participation by the town residents.
So can I ask you this? If anybody have their favorites, is anybody leaning strongly one way more than the other as far as an ISP right now?
Yeah, I mean, I have a favorite. Well, I actually am. I like them because of the CEO and the presentation. I thought it was genuine. But also I look at what's the bottom line, and Spectrum has the resources. They have the deep pockets, and I see what they're doing in Robinson, and it's happening quick. It's a no nonsense. They take care of business. I mean, I have some interaction with Spectrum, and it hasn't been positive as far as them reaching out to the Lake Road. Like I said, they want to do 55,000 to get me, internet to the Lake Road. So their business model was perfect. You pay for the infrastructure and they charge you for the service. So that was sort of distasteful. But listening to Melinda, Spectrum does have the resources and the pockets to do what needs to be done. And it sounds like at a minimal cost and possibly no cost to the town.
Well, that's yet to be determined.
Right, yeah, but she made the comment, and that's the first ISP that basically hinted around to, well, maybe it's not going to cost the town anything. The other ISPs, it's dependent upon the grants and, you know, whatever the grants, if they 80%, if they provide 80%, then that's still 20% that has to be put on the shoulders of the residents, which doesn't sound like that would be something that would be acceptable.
I mean, putting that type of burden on the town without a source of income, that's like the cooperatives that DBU and Axiom are talking about. I don't know how you could sell that.
I mean, it would be a difficult I mean, because it's a return on investment if we make that commitment, but we don't have a tremendous amount of businesses and so forth, and it's a small population, limited income. I think people realize how important it is, but they also have to heat their houses and put food on the table.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about where we go next. One idea that I have, I've used this before when you've got a lot of information from different sources and you want to pull it together. It's sometimes useful to put together a good spreadsheet. And I think that may serve our purposes. I know I'm having trouble remembering everything that Consolidated said and promised. And it may be time that we renew a conversation with them too. But in order to take the next step, I think we need to refresh our memories of what we've gone through for the last month and a half. What do you think?
And just as a reminder, these meetings are all recorded. And I know that's a lot to go back and watch, but they are recorded and I send out the links to the recording. So that may help to refresh memories as well.
I'd be more interested to see what Spectrum's got for numbers when they come back. I mean, if Melinda said he was going to get some figures together and find out what coverage they have and et cetera, I mean, I'd be interested to hear what she's got to say before we, wouldn't say waste of time, but me personally, I'm kind of leaning towards Spectrum myself based on the size of the company and how quick they could get to a job, how quick they could fix a problem if there was one. They don't have to resource out to another ISP to hook up to your house, that type of thing. I mean, I have a lot of pros and stuff written down that the others kind of fell short on, in my opinion. But it's just my opinion too. I mean, there's other members of the committee.
I think the proposal like Pioneer Wireless put out and the future build out that Spectrum is proposing or going to provide, I think that's a big part of our decision-making process. I mean, their presentations were fine, but the bottom line is going to be how much is it going to cost? And, and we get the grant and how much of that grant's going to cover it. It's nice having the presentations, and Consolidated, they toss a lot of information out. A lot of it was just marketing information. Yep. Even when the last presentation by Melinda, when Tina, I think she basically said, are you committing to that 2025 fiber? And she never got an answer to that question. But this time around, it seemed like there was more of a definitive answer. So having that actual proposal, how much it's going to cost, like Scotty says, that's the bottom line.
I mean, it's no question. It's everyone's goal to give us good speeds and provide good internet. It's up to us on where we go from there. I think they all have good presentations. The wireless fell a little short on as far as the speeds, but I think they're still providing good internet and good speeds that are reasonable. They're not as fast as the fiber, of course, but to me, it's a good service at a good price is what I am on, I guess.
Unfortunately, I forgot to ask you the question about whether or not they'd give us some sort of guarantee about price rises, because I know Spectrum can lowball you, and then all of a sudden, year and a half later, you're seeing 100% increase in your fees.
That's a good question. Good point.
But I think they can't target towns like Perry or Robinson or whoever, Eastport, even though they don't have the competition. I don't think they're allowed to target us because of a lack of competition or geographical location. Is that all right, Elaine? Or is that just a bad business practice?
No, so with MCA grants, the pricing has to be the same whether you live in Portland or Perry. So they're not allowed to, it's one price regardless of where you live in the state. So just because Perry might be more work, they can't charge you like $30 more a month than say they would for Belfast. Or, does that make sense? That's,
Yeah,
yeah, it's one price. That's if it's an MCA grant. Yeah.
and I think Consolidated already has statewide pricing, don't they?
My understanding, and I certainly haven't delved that far into what prices are everywhere. My understanding is depending on the ISP, the prices can vary depending on where you.
Yeah.
But I've never done like a statewide survey on what.
Well,
Oh.
I might have to go back and listen to Simon again, but I thought he said that that their pricing is uniform across the state.
And that could very well be. That could very well be. But it's
For a
not.
telephone company, that would kind of make sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to start working on this mainly because I don't like to wait. What I'll do as a first cut is I will put together a matrix and ask you guys to contribute to it, because I know that I'm probably not going to have all the right columns to put information in. How about we go from there?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, same here.
And just from my, because I, send out the invites or whatever, just let me know when it is that you would like to invite Melinda and her tech person to join the committee. Just
Will
let
do.
me know. Yeah,
Will
just let me
do.
know. Thanks.
Let me ask you a question, Elaine, while it's going through my head. You mentioned that you were going to get some guidance material documents on generating an RFP.
I do have those. Yep,
You have that already? Okay.
I do. I can certainly send it. They're what they are is they are kind of model or sample RFPs from 2 communities in Maine that went to RFP. And so I received those from MCA, Maine Connectivity Authority. So I can certainly send you those.
Okay. Well, don't confuse me with the facts yet.
No, all right. Let me know whenever it is you want to see them. I'll wait for you to tell me.
All right. All right.
Hey,
Yeah.
Elaine, I have a question for you.
Okay.
I guess, I guess we're part of a coalition, meaning Eastport, Pleasant Point, and Perry. Are we doing all right as far as the town of Perry? Are we going down the same path as Eastport and Pleasant Point, or we doing our own thing?
I don't know the answer to that. So as far as being a coalition, it's a very informal, just sharing of information sort of thing at this point. Each of your communities has your own committee. There's no agreements expressed, implied, or anything of the sort as like, a formalized regional approach. I know that it's for Eastport and Pleasant Point and for Perry, a lot of this makes sense to work together as a regional approach because you are contiguous communities. And so it does make sense to do that. So yeah. So are you on the same wavelength, or are you looking at the same models or whatever? I can't answer that. I'm not privy to what Pleasant Point is doing. I'm not privy to that. Uh, Eastport is getting ready to go out to RFP soon, is my understanding. And John, I think you were at the last meeting,
Right.
Eastport meeting. Yep. And so you heard that, yeah, that they're getting ready to go out to RFP soon. So I think they're going to wait and see how that comes back, how well that comes back. I don't think any community is hard and fast on what they're looking at for an ISP yet. I don't think they've.
Yeah, my impression is that we're closer to seeking an RFP than Eastport right now. It seems like Eastport has to spend a lot of time with town meetings, the Chamber of Commerce and so forth. It seems like for Perry, it's not as complicated as what Eastport is dealing with.
What Eastport is trying to do is to perform a lot of community engagement, so that to get the word out about what they're trying to do, to provide information, clarity to what they're trying to do. So that's why they're meeting with the Chamber of Commerce. They go to the city council meetings because that's what people are there. One, to present information to the city council on their work so far, but also so that the public can hear it as well. So they're doing a lot of community outreach and engagement to make sure that the public is well informed, and that any more people join, or people who have questions, it just is helping them guide their process, whether an individual is supportive of this project or not supportive, or in the middle, not sure what to think of it. So that's what they're working hard at right now, is just getting the word out to community members. But yeah, they are planning on going out to RFP pretty soon.
I think I have enthusiasm to work up some sort of consortium between our three communities. But I'd be a hell of a lot more enthusiastic about it if MCA would get its act straight. Because the performance, I know I'm recorded.
No,
I mean, looking at the performance last year of the communities that tried the municipal models,
Mhm.
they all failed. And I think I saw written somewhere that MCA acknowledged that they didn't really know I don't know what they didn't know, but they didn't succeed. And they said they were going to work on it. That's why I'm waiting for MCA to tell us, what are going to be the criteria for success in this round. Because I have a sense that it's going to be significantly different.
I can tell you it's going to be very, very, very competitive. Excuse me.
I
The
know
first
that.
round, the first round was competitive enough. The pot of money has shrunken considerably, so there's going to
Right.
be it's going to be highly competitive.
Right.
That I can't tell you. I can't speak for MCA and what they're doing in the background, but this is going to be very competitive. Very competitive.
Yeah. Which means there's a likelihood that we would compete, fail, and have to wait for BEAD, right?
Well, there's always a chance of not being funded. I certainly think that I mean, you and I, Ray, met with Kendra Joe from MCA. I may have her title wrong, but community engagement, or I know I have her title wrong. But we met with her, and so you certainly can make an appointment to talk with her again, or even to invite her to a committee meeting, to talk to the committee.
Yeah. It might be useful to do in the next few weeks.
Mhm.
Anything else we need to talk about? We're actually going to finish on time today.
Ray, I'm gonna be out of the game. Let me see. Probably April 17th through the 27th, maybe the morning of the 27th. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be available for that afternoon meeting, the 27th. So
Okay,
I'll be out of the game, guys.
okay. Thanks for telling.
Yeah, it's my annual vacation. I'll be going to Bangor, Maine.
What?
Yeah, going all out this year. Comforting. Yeah, I hop, the whole, that's the kind of guy I am, but my family just,
That's cool. That's
You're not
very
holding
cool.
back, pulling out all the stops, John.
yeah. I may be able to utilize, I don't know if the Comfort Inn has high-speed internet, but I'll be right there looking.
That's charming.
My wife, she's so lucky. Glad this is being recorded.
Oh.
Well, why don't we call it a day? And as soon as I get something to share with you, I'll send it off, okay?
All right, perfect. Well, thank you.
Okay. Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
Thank you.
Have a good
Bye.
weekend, y'all.
You too.